Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and in today's video I'm going to be playing with plaid pattern paper. This week's challenge on the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge blog is to use plaid, and if you have it, to use lawn fawn. So I wanted to mix and match some plaids, and sometimes that can be difficult to do. So in this video I'm going to mix and match some plaids and then create some fun little colored donuts. So let's get started. So I started out by grabbing a couple of 6x6 pads from Lawn Fawn. This is the Perfectly Plaid 6x6 pad, and I have part of the rainbow plaid pad that came in the Simon Says Stamp kit. So I have a bunch of different plaids and I want to mix and match them without getting too busy. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card panel. That's going to be my background, and the way I'm going to keep that from being too busy is by layering white cardstock over it. And these plaids have a really great white that runs through them, making it really easy to use white cardstock. I've grabbed 3 pieces of the plaid there, and I'm going to cut it into 1.5 by 1.5 inch squares. This is another way to mix and match pattern papers without making them too overwhelming. If you use squares, small bits and pieces, you can use several different plaids and not get too out of control. The next thing I'm going to do is use the Lawn Fawn donut stamp here, and I have it in my Misty. I'm going to stamp it a couple of times with the My Favorite Things hybrid black ink because I am going to be Copic coloring these donuts. So I don't want to push too hard on these smaller clear acrylic stamps because you can smear them even in the Misty. So I'm pushing down lightly, but then I'm double stamping. Since I can do that in my Misty, I'm double stamping everything to get a nice crisp black impression. So like I said, I'm going to stamp it 3 times. I'm going to give myself some room in between the stamps because I am going to be die cutting these after I color them. I use my chamois there to clean everything up. Okay, now I have 3 Copic markers, and you can see the numbers on the side there. This is just for the donut part of the donuts, so for the cake part of the donut that's underneath the frosting. Honestly, you don't have a lot of real estate there. So if you even just wanted to grab one color and color it that way, I didn't have one color that seemed like it fit to me for the cake part of the donut. And that's why I grabbed 3 colors and I'm kind of blending them together. But honestly, there's not a lot of room to do a lot of blending. So really, like I said, I was doing that more because I couldn't find the perfect cake color. So I'm going to go through and just add a little bit of the medium and the dark and then blend it out with that lightest color. And that's how I did all 3 of my donuts. Now I'm going to grab a couple of blues for my frosting, and I started there by drawing a circle with the lightest blue, and I'm not going to color that until the very end. That's going to be the little shiny part of the frosting where it's catching the light. So I'm going to go through and color the rest of that frosting with that light color, and then I'm going to grab the darker color and bring it in towards the center from the scallop. I feel like that little scallop is going to be dark, and then right in the center there is going to be dark as well. I'm going to go back with the lightest color, and I'm going to use this really circular motion to pull those 2 together because there's such a difference between the 2 colors. I'm adding a ton of ink down on the paper to get them to really blend well. And once that's all blended out, then I can finally use that light color again to cover up the little catch light there on the donut and hope that it stays a little bit lighter than the rest of the donut. So this is how I colored the other 2 as well, the green and the purple. The same thing, I just used 2 colors for each, and I tried to grab markers that matched the plaid that was going to be underneath. And I feel like that helps to pull everything together and hopefully keep the plaids from getting too busy. Again, if I am introducing more colors, then it's going to get a little crazy. Okay, now I'm going to do some white heat embossing on these donuts, but first I'm going to add some anti-static powder, and I add a ton here because the ink is still a little wet and I want to make sure that the anti-static doesn't stick to the donut, only on the parts that I'm stamping. So I have some Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink, and I'm using the sprinkles that were from that little Lawn Fawn donut set on 2 of the donuts, and then I'm using a little smiley face that was also from that tiny little set, has got a ton of little stamps in it. It's super cute. So now I'm going to use some Hero Arts white embossing powder. I'm going to pour it all over my embossing ink there, and I felt like I wasn't getting 100% coverage, so I just poured some more and then tapped off on the back. Now I have my heat tool nice and hot, and I'm going to bring it in and melt the embossing powder, and you can just see how cute those little sprinkles and that smiley face look on the Copic colored donuts. Now it's time to just wipe away that embossing anti-static powder, and you can see that the color is still really, really vibrant and pretty. This is the coordinating die for this Lawn Fawn donut set. So I'm going to line it up by putting the middle circle over the donut hole and then making sure that there's no white that you can see on any of the edges. And then I'm going to cover it up with some washi tape and run it through my Sizzix machine. And you can see that because you have the center hole and the outside to line it up with, you get this great even margin all around all of those donuts. This is one of the easiest dies to cut. Now I'm going to use a white gel pen just on a couple of spots that I got some Copic marker that I didn't want them. And I know you can use the colorless blender, but I feel like this white gel pen does a really good job too. And I have the Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle. This is the 4 by 5 1/4 rectangle. So I've cut that out of white cardstock, and now I'm going to try and line up my sentiment also in that tiny little stamp set, and it says "Do not worry," and then it says "Be happy" on the bottom. So I want to really get this straight, and I am famous for not being able to do that. So I'm going to put it inside my MISTI, use the rectangles just as a guide to figure out how high and low I want those 2 sentiments. And then once I figure out exactly where I want them placed, I'm going to get rid of the rectangles and use the grid on the MISTI to really, really line everything up. So at first I think I'm going to get ready to stamp, and then I realize I really need to see them on the grid paper underneath. Sorry about my head there, but you have to really look on top to make sure that everything is nice and straight. And I just fidget with it just a little bit at a time, because if I do too much, then it's like when you give yourself a haircut, it's like too much on one side and then you have to go do the other side again. So now I'm bringing back the My Favorite Things hybrid ink, and that's so that I'm not going to Copic color this, but I want all the blacks to match. So maybe that's ridiculous, but I really like when all the black inks look exactly the same. And I'm going to stamp this a couple of times to get that really nice crisp black impression. And look, it's actually straight. It's a miracle for me, and I like the way that's all placed. So now I'm going to bring in my rectangles and try and line these up nice and straight. And the way that I'm going to do that is to grab the left hand one and place it just inside the stitched marks that we get by die cutting them. And then I'm going to place the purple one right next to it and leaving the blue one there just for a guide as to how wide the margin should be on the left-hand side there. Now I have everything pretty much lined up. I decide that I want to maneuver the purple square a little bit, and that's what's great about this ThermoWeb Memory Runner XL is that once you press it down and you let it sit for a bit, it's not going anywhere. But if you grab it really fast and before you press it down, you can maneuver it a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to add some of that tape runner to the back of the white cardstock panel and layer it over our 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch plaid panel. So now we have 4 plaids on this one card, and I think it works. It's okay. So now I'm just going to lay it over a side folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. And then I decide that I want the frosting to be really ultra shiny. So I've grabbed 3 Nuvo crystal drops from, these are the jewel drops, I'm sorry, from Tonic Studios, and I have a green, and then for the purple I have a pink, and then I have a blue. So the great thing about these is that they dry both dimensional and translucent. So it looks cloudy at first in the video, but you'll see in the photographs afterwards, it is crystal clear with just a hint of color. These are so pretty. I love them, and they're so easy to use. That's the other thing that I really like about these. I was actually looking for my glossy accents and couldn't find them, but these worked just as well, and I was very happy with the results. So that is my card. It mixes and matches 4 different types of plaids and also creates a couple of cute frosted donuts. All of the supplies that I am using today are going to be linked down below if you're curious about those. Check out the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday blog if you're curious about those challenges. And I want to thank you so much for stopping by today. Have a great day.